This episode of the Cascadian Beer Podcast has been made possible by the BC Ale Trail. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired. bcaletrail.ca. Ownership is a driving force to any business. So if you can keep your brewery family owned, that can lead to some new creative paths. Welcome to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. My name's Aaron, and I'm a Cascadian. I have a background in radio and television broadcasting. I'm a music producer, and I have a passion for beer. I don't consider myself an expert in beer by any means, but I do enjoy and respect the craft and the passion of the craft beer industry. Cascadia is a bioregion in the Pacific Northwest and the North American continent. It's made up of the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon, as well as the Canadian province of British Columbia. In this podcast series, I profile the unique breweries of Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence on the international beer scene. If you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode, and please feel free to share to help continue the support of this series. I'm in British Columbia's capital, Victoria. During my visit during Victoria Craft Beer Week, I had a chance to visit with many of the local breweries, one of them being Moon Under Water Brewery, Pub, and Distillery. I sat down with their brewmaster to talk about their creativity and their new adventure into distilling.
Clay Potter. I'm one of the owners and brewmaster here at Moon Under Water.
And how long has Moon Under Water been open for?
It's been open for about 6.5 years, and we bought it about 5.5 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, we've taken over about a year into it.
And so how did beer find you?
Always been into beer. I got started, when I was young. My mom and I used to have beers every Friday night when I was about 16, and we used to try to get a different 6-pack every week. And by the time I was 19, I had tried every beer that was available to be bought in BC, and started home brewing and just fell in love with it.
Man, gotta say big cheers to your mom.
Yeah. Who thought we'd open a brewery together?
Yeah. So she's one of the other owners?
Yeah. So it's just all family. So it's me, my mom, and my stepdad. So
awesome. Cool.
Yeah, you met Steve earlier. He's looking after the new distillery over there.
Yeah. So we'll touch on that. But first, what were the types of beers that you set out to make once you made the purchase? Like, did you have to change the lineup at all, or? Yeah,
we completely changed it. We changed everything but the name, and that came down to basically we maxed out all of our savings, everything we could come up with, and we didn't really have a lot of time to rebrand. Yeah, exactly. So. We did all new beers, and actually complete opposite style from what they were doing before. So it was an English style sort of brew pub before, very focused on low alcohol session ales. But they had this beautiful German brew house, and it was sort of a diamond in the rough. They had brought it over from Korea. It was custom made over there, and it would have been $1 million package when it was set up in Korea.
That's a lot of copper on there.
Yeah, all that copper. That's all for show. So
yeah, I know.
Someone had a lot of money to spill into it. The story with the Korean one was interesting. They set it up I guess it was about 15 years ago now. And the story was the Germans came in, they set it up, they taught the Koreans how to brew. It was set up in a skyscraper in Seoul. The Germans leave after 6 months. They get all the recipes ready for you. The Koreans brewed for a few months after that, and then they just stopped brewing. And they just left it as a showpiece. And the bar stayed open for another 3 years. And then eventually they went bankrupt. It went to a shipping container. It sat in the shipping container for about 8 years. Never got used.
Wow.
The previous owner, Don and Bonnie Bradley, bought it for really cheap, almost scrap metal prices. Well, brought it over.
Obviously nobody wanted it.
Yeah, right. I think they didn't know what they had. And they brought it over here, and they kind of cut it up and set it up as an English style sort of infusion brewery. Right. But really it's almost semi-automated, but we do all our step mashes. Everything can be programmed in. We can do decoction brewing on it. So it's really a state-of-the-art little brew house.
Right. So what is a decoction brew then?
A decoction comes from the old German style of brewing. So before you could have jacketed vessels where you could control the temperature properly, everything was done basically boiling vessels over open flame. And the Germans figured out how to optimize for different enzymes to make their lagers really dry. So basically what you're doing, you're taking a portion of your mash, you're pulling it out, you're putting it in a separate pot, and you're boiling it while stirring it, bringing the temperature up, and then adding that back to your main mash. And that is raising the temperature. So if you think about a typical infusion mashing homebrew system, you're resting at one temperature. You might be getting 70% efficiency out of that.
Yep.
We're getting low 90s for efficiency on ours.
Wow.
Because we're starting at a protein rest, and we're bringing up to beta glucanase, alpha amylase sort of rests, and going from there.
Right. So then, what is the size of the brew house then?
It's 1,000 liter brew house. So we can push 1,200 out maybe if we mash it pretty full. And then, maybe 800 liters if we're doing a big barrel aged beer or something.
Okay. All right. So yeah, you do barrel aged beers. That's a fairly recent program, right? That you've started?
No, we almost started it right from the start. I think we bought our first barrels maybe 6 months in. We bought 16 barrels from a local winery, about half blackberry port barrels, half red wine barrels. And we've been aging, our first release was about 2.5 years in, because we aged them for about 1.5 years in the barrels. Since then, we've expanded. We've got about 24 barrels on this side. And then my old head brewer's got a barrel house as well, and he's looking after a lot of our sour beers there. So we've probably got about 40 or so altogether.
Cool.
Yeah. So we try to do, one batch will be 4 barrels, one batch on our system. So we try to release one every season. And with the new expansion on this side here, we're hoping to double those up. So
right.
We're hoping to do, 2 releases a season or so, 8 releases or so a year.
Right. So is there a core lineup then? Because we have a flight here, and there's quite an array. Is there anything that is like a core year-round lineup, or are you fairly rotating everything through?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, our lagers is really what we specialize in. So as I sort of back to the original story there, when we took over, it was all English session ales. We thought there was definitely a market for well-made lagers on the island. And, 6-7 years ago, we thought that was the way that the craft beer scene is going. And we're definitely seeing it. It might have taken 5-6 years, but we're definitely seeing Pilsners make a comeback. I think ales are definitely easier to make. Yeah. You can throw a bunch of hops in any beer and kind of fool a lot of beer drinkers. But making a really clean, crisp lager is a little bit tougher. So with the German system, that was our goal from the start. So we'll always have 3 lagers, our light side session lager, a Dunkel, and German Pils. That kind of shows the variety of lagers that are out there. And then, we got to have an IPA. Always talk about getting rid of our regular West Coast IPA, but it can never fully get rid of it, especially having the brew pub. That's the beer that most of the regulars go for.
I mean, it is the region that we live in. It's IPA home.
That's right. Yeah. As we've played around with our IPA a lot, almost every batch is different. We're constantly screwing around with new hops and new recipes. So it's the one beer that it's a core beer, but it's always different. And then we always have a hef year round. So 8 months of the year, we'll do our straight German Hefeweizen. The other 4 months, we're doing our Weizenbock, strong dark wheat beer. We'll do a pumpkin pears and wheat Weizen in the fall with pumpkins. So that's sort of our take on that. And then, and we're just constantly, with the small brew house, we do a different 1,000 liter batch every couple of weeks. A lot of it doesn't leave the brew pub. So, locals will know about it. But over in Vancouver, I think you don't hear about 90% of the beers that we're brewing.
Yeah. Just want to say thank you really quick to the BC Ale Trail for making this episode possible, who, by the way, have an ale trail for Victoria. All you need to do is go to the bcaletrail.ca and you'll find recommended itineraries for not just Victoria, but other regions of the province, a comprehensive list of every craft brewery in BC, a calendar of beer events, and a blog with lots of great stories. The regional ale trails include local breweries, pubs, and restaurants, along with other activities the area has to offer. So whether you're planning a weekend trip or being a tourist in your own backyard or just want to check out Victoria and have no idea where to begin, well, let the BC Ale Trail guide you to your next beer adventure. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at bcaletrail.ca. To touch on something you said there about like how you think lagers are coming back. Yeah, I would kind of agree with you with that, because starting this podcast almost 3 years ago now, everybody's like, oh, lagers are boring. And, you know, it was the big hop bombs, the big IPAs at the time were doing the thing. But now, and I was having a conversation earlier this morning with another brewer about how the boring beers, I think, are stepping forward because of the appreciation for the balance and the character and just actually sticking to the style. So, I mean, is that something that you're really trying to dial in here, is just being absolutely true to that style?
Yeah, we've just been trying to perfect that. It's a tough beer to make, and we've been trying to perfect those lagers since the start. And I think what it's coming down to is the average beer drinker's palate is getting better.
Yeah.
You can't make a crappy craft beer anymore. You can't just make something, because there's so many breweries now and the competition is getting so much tougher, and people's palates are getting more discerned, and they're starting to pick out these, you know, well-made lagers and appreciating them.
Yeah. So you make beer, wort. Seems like you're wanting to do something else with that.
Definitely. Yeah. We're sitting in the new distillery tasting room right now. It's a little quiet because we're not open yet.
Soon.
We've got our manufacturing license. We've been pumping out spirits since just before Christmas. We got a beautiful little Polish still, 500 liters. So we're brewing about once a week on the weekends. Bringing the totes over to the distillery side, pitching our yeast, fermenting over here, and then doing our all grain craft spirits. So the city of Victoria is a little tougher with the tasting rooms. So you notice there's no breweries have tasting rooms in Victoria. You either have a brew pub or you have a brewery, and nothing in between. So we've got the brew pub license, and we've got the distillery license, and we've got this empty tasting room. So we're hoping we're going to be the first ones approved. Phillips has built a tasting room as well. He's waiting to be approved. There's actually another brewery in Rock Bay just up the street, Il Sauvage, that's got a tasting room built. They're waiting to be approved. So we're just hounding the city. They told us January, then they told us February. Now they're telling us March. It's March now.
It's March when we're taping this.
We should go knock on their door.
Yeah. Well, and we're taping this during Victoria Beer Week as well. So
what better time
to announce new rules and be friends with the brewing community than during Victoria Beer Week? So we'll see. So with the beers that you're doing and now the spirits, I mean, where do you go from here? Like, are you going to be just kind of comfortable at this level? Or
that's the point we got to. We've got a small brew house. We've got a small pub. There was definitely more demand for our beers than we could provide, especially over in Vancouver.
Because you package with West Coast Canning, right? So,
that's right. Yeah. And we've got a homemade bottling line that we bottle 2 bottles at a time. So we really thought, we were at sort of a crossroads at our 5-year anniversary, which was in September there. Do we expand? Do we move locations? Do we build a big brewery? Do we become a production brewery? And that's what everyone else seems to be doing. There's also a lot of breweries opening up, and there is room for them all if the public gets behind it and increases craft beer drinking. But we thought the other way to go would be to stay small and expand into different areas. So the distillery, that's the end goal that we went with, keeping everything smaller, keeping everything local. I've worked in big breweries and it's not as fun. It's more staff, more trying to please more people. We like to be a little more experimental and a little more wild and keeping everything small.
But you can do that with the scale of which you're at, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So rather than build a 30 hec or 450 hec brew house, we thought we'd just keep the brew house the same. We brought in some more tanks, do some more seasonals. We're brewing 5 days a week. We'll be brewing 7 days a week this summer, and then expanding to the distillery side and getting into sodas. And Victoria's a great tourist market, so we get lots of tourists. The more people we can bring to our brewery and sell out of the brewery, for every pint that we sell in the brewery, we can make about the same as shipping off, a case of beer. So for us, we thought, we'll keep the margins small, keep it small. We don't want to take on any investors. We want to stay family business. So
yeah. Well, and then that would kind of not give you the freedom to experiment as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing, we can focus on our, just pumping out our light side lager or something on a massive scale, or, we can continue to do these small batches of funky beers and see. Because
I just got the sneak peek at the new barrel aged bottles that are coming out and and with your packaging as well, like that's beautifully presented. So
right on.
Got to give you guys props for doing that.
Yeah. And it's something that we couldn't do if we're a bigger brewery. These are all corked and caged by hand, hand stamped, everyone rolled on. So, we'll get I've got 3 guys in the brewery right now, actually myself and 2 others on the brew house side. And then we just bring in, students and that for bottling days and canning days. And that's just a comfortable spot to be.
So if somebody was wanting to go down this path of opening up their own brewery, what would be some advice that you could give them?
It's funny at the beginning, we thought, go big. Phillips was our inspiration. We, the family we all knew Phillips from the beginning. And, he did that. And that was a time that he came in that he was able to expand and grow at a ridiculous rate. And now the way craft beer is going, I think people are wanting local. People want something in their community. They want to know the person who's making it and where everything's coming from. So, I think that the growth is going to be in the smaller towns and as not so much the regional brewers that.
Well, just here on the island, like the small communities have a bunch of breweries opening up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Victoria's always been sort of a beer city. Like Spinnaker's the first brew pub in Canada to come in there. And Victorians are fiercely loyal to their local companies. So we've already got quite a few big breweries in Victoria now. So,
but I'm like speaking of like Souk and and like Port Alberni's getting one, right?
Yeah, so, Parksville, Dave up at Mount Aerosmith, doing great beers. Yeah, it used to be you drive up the island and there was very few and far between, and now you can stop every 15 minutes and pop into a brewery for a taster. It's a little dangerous, but Tofino's done great out there. They showed that
that's an effort to get out there.
Something. Like I can, it's scary driving that road out there in my car. I can imagine bringing a bunch of pallets of malt out there. And they've been super successful, just based on that image of Tofino as well as making great beers. But it shows you can open a brewery anywhere as long as the locals get behind you.
And you're making great beer.
And you're making great beer. Yeah. I think that's where the scene's going. You're going to have to make great beer. You didn't necessarily have to make great beer in the past. You had to be, you could have great marketing or just open up where there was a vacuum of any kind of beer. But now I think we're going to start to weed out, the really good brewers, and Vancouver's pushing that with the breweries over there. The new ones that are opening up are really forcing everyone to step their game up.
Yeah. There's really time to dial in the recipes.
Yeah, definitely. Which was another reason to, stay small and focus on a niche market, Yeah. There's so many styles out there now. So there's only going to be room for people that can do them really well.
And then who's inspiring you locally to up your game?
Oh, you know what? We're such a good community here. Everybody's looking out for each other. Everyone's inspiring each other. I mean, having the only, brew pub in the sort of Rock Bay area, the Driftwood guys are in for lunch almost every day. The Hoyne guys are in for lunch all the time, and Il Sauvage, of course. And then we collaborate with the other brew pubs as well. We did a little Victoria Harbor brew pub collective. So between us, Canoe, Spinnakers, and Swans, we take turns brewing on each other's systems. So we share deliveries and things like that. So we're all super tight. I mean, everyone here knows we're all fighting against the big breweries.
Right.
Yeah, as far as inspiration, every Friday, we'll have beers with my brewers and with other brewers, and we'll just taste what's new and what's out there. And it's something great. We'll try to
lots of great ideas come from Friday drinks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if somebody was wanting to get into home brewing, what would be some practical tips that you could give the up and coming brewer?
Brew lots. Yeah, I actually started brewing before I was really home brewing, like brewing on a big scale, brewing for a brewery. I started off working in a lab for Lighthouse, and that was about the same time that I started brewing. And when I was there, it was run by the guys that started Driftwood, and they were big time home brewers. So, we were back then, Lighthouse wasn't making a whole lot of different beers. We had sort of the same 4 beers for 15 years. But these guys were brewing small scale almost every day. And they really inspired myself and Dan, who's now the brewmaster at Canoe, to get into home brewing and let our creative forces go there. And you have a lot of ideas in your head. You make a lot of terrible beers, and you make the odd good beer as well. So, just staying, not getting too wild, but just brewing the same beers over and over again until you perfect them.
Yeah.
And we're still doing that in the brewery. Like I said, every beer is different. We might try a half a degree higher, for a rest, and like extra 100 grams of finishing hops or something.
Right.
Constantly tweaking it until it's perfect.
Big thank you to Clay for his time. We recorded that episode back in March of 2018, and I'm happy to say as this episode drops now in late 2018, they are about to finally open that tasting room for their distilling side. So really looking forward to checking that out finally, and checking out what they've been up to creatively on the distilling end of things. But, you should just go check out the pub itself anyway, that Moon Under Water. And thank you very much again, Clay, for your time. Really appreciate it. And thank you to the BC Ale Trail for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to check them out at bcaletrail.ca. If you've been enjoying this episode and you want to continue to enjoy this podcast series and connect with us, you can by going to Facebook at facebook.com/Cascadian Beer. You can follow me on Twitter at Cascadian Beer, and I'm on Instagram at Cascadian Beer Podcast. For more information about this podcast series and to check out other episodes I've done, you can head to the website at cascadian.beer. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you listening. And until next time, remember, support your local.